Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another History Happy Hour with Knoxville History Project. Now, we might be a couple of minutes behind tonight because Nissa, our special guest, just lost power at her house, but apparently it's back on. So we're just going to do a little informal tap dance for a minute while we wait to see her back in the waiting room. So hopefully that won't take more than a couple of minutes. So most of you know already, we are the Knoxville History Project, and we appreciate you joining us again, or for the first time, if it is your first time. Our mission is to research and preserve and promote the history and culture of Knoxville, Tennessee. I did want to mention, as Jack said, our Downtown Knoxville book came out, I think, on the 24th. Thanks for everyone who's ordered a copy already. It is in a bunch of stores downtown, and actually, we were thrilled to see that it's also for sale actually in the Sunsphere, ready for when that opens next week. I would encourage you, if you've not got the book, you can buy it through us in our shop online, or you can find it at Union Avenue Books, the History Center on Gay Street, the Sunsphere, obviously, when it opens. Blunt Mansion is selling it, a whole bunch of other places. And just as we love working with Laura Stell, who's with us tonight as usual, and I want to also promote and encourage you, if you've not taken a tour with Laura. She also does tours at the Knoxville Botanical Garden. So I don't think the flowers look like this today, but she will do tours anytime. But they'll be looking like that before we know it. So please consider doing a tour with Laura in the next few weeks. So Jack, I'm going to hand it back over to you. And
all right, thanks, Paul.
Thanks.
And I'm grateful to welcome Nissa. She's an old friend and also one of the most esteemed guests we've had speaking to us. She's a former associate director of the Baker Center for Public Policy at UT campus, but in recent years has been director of higher education for the American Institute of Architects in Washington, D.C. For the last 5 years or so. But we're grateful that she has taken some time on her own to look at one of the most interesting sites and most interesting attractions in Knoxville, the Knoxville Botanical Gardens, which has a very deep history that I'll let Nissa tell us more about, assuming she's still with us.
Yeah.
Oh, great! There you are. Good. I'm grateful to see you. All right. Welcome, Nissa Dahlin-Brown.
This has not been a great start. As Jack said, my name is Nissa Dahlin-Brown, and you can see my screen okay, I guess, Jack?
Yes, looks great.
Okay. What I was going to tell you about tonight is the national, I wrote a National Register nomination for the Knoxville Botanical Garden and Arboretum. Of course, the National Register, the way it works is it's for properties 50 years and older, so it will go under the name Howe Nurseries. And that means that this period of significance, the latest is 1972. So basically, I'm looking at the significance from 1895 to 1972. That's due to the fact that that's how the earliest date I could, make sure I could prove. So to try and explain about the National Register. So where we are now with the Register is it passed the Tennessee Historical Commission, and now it goes to the federal level, the National Park Service for final approval. So it has been nominated. It's still not on the Register because we're waiting for that final approval. Okay, so basically, I'm going to talk to you tonight about the 200+ year history of the Howe family that became the Botanical Gardens. Of particular interest is the Joe Howe home. He built it in 1929. It's a minimal traditional style. It is you see this hand-tinted photograph of the original home. And basically looks, when you look at, if you've been there and you look at it directly from Wimpole, it looks just like that. And it was a style that was popular from the Depression up until the World War II. And then also just what I discovered as far as the family. I mean, their skills, their knowledge, their expertise in botany, landscape design, craftsmanship is just really phenomenal. And so I don't cover any of the current plans for the KBGA, but I assume Jim Richards already did that too at your previous program. So the walking tour, basically this is the nominated property, is what you see on the walking tour map. And this is a 1895. I put the 1895 circa because this is the earliest proof I have that they were there, you know. So what you're seeing here is this little red circle. This is blown up. This is the area in the red circle blown up. And on that map, it shows I know from 1807, Howe's Mill, which is right here. They built it as a mill, which was very common practice at the time. There's an M. Howe here, and there's S. Howe, which is Sylvanus Howe. So this area, and this is Boyd's Bridge Pike. So we are in the area of the botanical gardens. So it was they were definitely there and farming at that time. Some of the information on the family, this is kind of the family tree. It started with David Wesselshau when he first settled before Tennessee was even a state. He was a Civil War soldier, and the North Carolina Territory was what we were called then, and he bought for 150 shillings 2 tracts, a 302-acre tract along the Holston River and Lyons Creek. And by 1814, and he did that around 1786, 1784. By 1814, he'd increased his farm lands, because he was a farmer, to 1,550 acres. So then his son, Sylvanus Howe, took over, and the legend has of the family that he planted these Cedars of Lebanon, which are still there today around 1860. And he did that so he could attract business for the farm. So he was already doing marketing at the time. So then his son, Samson Sylvanus, is called SS. He kind of kicked off the whole business. He seemed to be the entrepreneurial one because he established SS Howe Nursery by 1886. And he had 2 sons who joined him, Bruce and CB. And they sold wholesale, retail, and this little shot here is a 1904 catalog of their products that they sold, and they sold them, across the U.S. And of course, at that time, the railroad was big and so on. And this is a family shot circa 1906, and I believe, this may be Martha Howe, at least that was what was written on the sheet of paper. And this may be Bruce Howe, but this, again, I'm not sure. So it'd be great if somebody really knows that they can identify these people. But Sylvanus was known for his award-winning strawberries. And with SS's death, as I mentioned, then all the other brothers, he had 5 sons. So he had Bruce, Samuel, SR, William Fletcher, WF, they went by their initials, Carol Sylvanus, CS, and Colbrine, CB. So all 5 brothers, then when SS passed away, they became Howe Nurseries. And they actually grew to 13 nurseries across the Southeast. So they had them in Florida, South Carolina, Virginia, and various places in Tennessee. And they had 1,000 acres in Sweetwater, which was their propagation center. And that was managed by Bruce Howe. So this then is the kind of the 5th and 6th generations of Howes. So from 1930s forward, C.B. Howe Sr., his son Joe, who built the house, and this is Joe Howe, he attended UT. And then while he was working at one of those various branches in South Carolina, he apprenticed or somehow worked with some European landscape. And that's where he really got into the idea of landscape design and using hardscapes and this beautiful stonework to accent and set off, landscapes and garden. So by 1942, he decided to launch his own business, and he added 16 acres on the east side to the existing Howe Nursery on the west, along with his home, and he built additional proper structures that I'll show you in a minute. SR's daughter, Martha, she went to the Lothrop School in Massachusetts, and she became the first female landscape architect that TVA hired for the new town of Norris. WF, one of the brothers, he ended up closing down during the Depression. They closed, as I mentioned, many. So he closed down the Florida operation, and he went to work for the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and then eventually TVA. And so that connection with TVA really would help both the Howe nurseries, because they sold a lot of plants and landscape design to the TVA dams. So then by the 1950s, C.B. Jr., who was half brother to Joe, and as you can see, I mean, there was about 20 years difference in age. Joe was 20 years older than C.B. Jr., but they were he was a half brother. He and his sister Florence took over after C.B. Sr. died, and with Carl Wallace, who was Flo's husband, also a landscape architect, and C.B. had both of them had gone to UT, and everybody had, you know, studied horticulture or agriculture. They eventually grew back the Howe Nurseries business to 20 employees by 1986. And they had also by that time gotten into landscape design much more strongly. So both Joe's business and CB's business were both doing landscape design, but still there was propagation on the CB's side. So when Joe died in 1980, his daughter, Jenny Howe Jukes, took over, and she ran the business while she was also maintaining her full-time job as a control analyst at Roman Haas. And then finally, as you can kind of see now, there weren't any sibling next generation that wanted to take over the business. So both families sold in 2002, 2004 to create the KBGA, you know, co-founded by the late Jim McDonough and Jim Cortese. And they had support from the city, the state, Aslan Foundation, Nature Conservancy, Victor Ashe, and I'm sure others that I'm not mentioning. So that kind of, and this picture is from 1951 when Joe obviously had just gotten everything built. And of course, now you know what it looks like today and everything grown up and so different. But he really was pushing now his idea of landscape design with hardscapes and that being the way to market plants as well. This I did not know at all was the plant discoveries that particularly Bruce Howe made. But even beginning back in the 1880s to 90s, S.S. Howe co-patented an insect trap. I mean, that was his first thing. And then he grew award-winning strawberries, and they were called, you know, Howe's Prolific and Howe's Seedling #2. And they were in the newspaper in 1888. It was just these luscious strawberries that are grown on 20 acres in East Knoxville. So, and he also began pushing the first agricultural exhibits, and those being one of them. It was a new thing to have agricultural exhibits. So he was appointed to the 95-97 Knoxville Centennial Commission. He was one of the commissioners. So that was a pretty prestigious appointment as well. But then his son, Bruce Howe, who there's an article in the Southern Nursery Association, they called him the botanist of the brothers, because he discovered William Tuvey, a pink crepe myrtle. He discovered weeping privet. He created the Sweetwater red flowering dogwoods, the Cherokee chief. The photograph is that. I mean, those beautiful red dogwoods. And then the famous kind of Bufurdi holly that we see everywhere. That was from a cemetery in Atlanta. The superintendent was Thomas Burford, and so it was named for him. And of course, I'm not real clear. I'm not a botanist or an agriculture about the difference, I mean, with cultivars and hybrids and how all these things happen. But Bruce Howe was pointed out in several UT Ag that for his creation of these various red dogwoods. So, all right, now, and then finally, the community engagement. One thing that you'll see soon is that Joe Howe even built when he added on to his home, he built a community room, and that was for gardening lectures. And so the whole family was out giving lectures and talks on gardening and design. I mean, even beginning with SS, I found him in Morristown, found him all over giving these talks. SR, Joe, CB, Martha, Carl Wallace, all of them were giving talks, inviting speakers to Knoxville that they knew to talk. And then in 1934, CB Howe Sr. began his column, Digging Amongst the Flowers, and he ran that for 30 years at least. And of course, his son also decided, well, it's a good way to sell, because it was pretty much it was an article about growing, but it was also a way to sell the plants they were growing at the Howe Nursery. So son Joe launched his own as well. And then, as mentioned, by 1942, Joe launched his business on 16 acres adjacent to the 28 acres Howe Nurseries. That was CB's house. And I mentioned the 1951, where he had this big opening of his new structures. And then 1961 is when CB Jr. co-founded the Knoxville Dogwood Arts Festival with Knoxville Mayor John Duncan and Mrs. Mears. And there were also articles about how during the Depression, when they had to lay off, or they also were paying their employees with script. They also would donate trees, like to plant along Kingston Pike to beautify Knoxville, and also to provide jobs. So they really were concerned and engaged in the community as well. And then they also were they were in presidents of their professional associations, with S.R. Howe in 1930, president of the Southern Nursery Association, Joe Howe, president of the Tennessee Nursery Association in 49. And in 50, he was president of the Southern Nurserymen Association. And then C.B. Howe in 1964, president of the Tennessee Nurserymen Association. So with that, I've kind of gone over the family. I'm going to show you the house and the home. And I was really struck. At first, we didn't know that. At first, they didn't really think the house was worth being nominated to the register. But the more I got into it, the more I thought, this has just got to be. It's a minimal traditional style. And of course, as many of you probably know, sustainability is all the rage. And if there was ever sustainable use, which of course means a lot, local materials close to home, no transportation, local craftsmen. I mean, that's what Joe did with this house. So this is a drawing. This is the way it looks today, very much as it was originally built. The minimal traditional style is known for having very little ornamentation, no, deep eaves in the roof line, but they used quality materials. So you have tile roof, you have wood siding, beautiful stone, and attention to detail, actually. This one also has copper gutters. It has copper canopies, and all, of course, was original. And in the 1940s is when he then added all the stone, these two-story stone structure that you see here. This is on the east side with the terraces. But he added on to his home, because, I'm sorry, the other thing about minimal traditional style is they were very, very small. It had 2 bedrooms, kitchen, living room, what they called a sewing room, and I don't know, probably maybe 1,000 square feet, 900 square feet, very small. So he added to his growing family the 2-story, and also to house his business, the stone. He also built a garage apartment for his in-laws, 3 stone greenhouses, and then the 4 round stone structures, and of course, all demonstration gardens with the walls and so on. Okay. These are just more views of the house. This is the garage apartment you can see in the back. This is just the rear view facade with the stone kind of L here. This is the original floor plan. Of course, the original house is in the bolder outline here. And then all this was added, basically upper floor for the family living quarters, and then downstairs for the office and the community gardens. They had dining room and then bedrooms and baths. This is a photograph of the living room. It was an ad for TVA advertising the new electricity that had come to the region. And this is Mrs. Pullum reading by the lights in her newly designed house on Howe Ridge Road, because at that time Wimpole Street was called Howe Ridge Road. The only difference, as you can see in these 2 photographs from today and 1939, is the fact that instead of windows, there's now an opening that goes into the dining room. But everything is still as it was then. This is more views. The kitchen had Geneva cabinets, which were really popular at the time. They were metal cabinets, which was kind of unique because it kept the vermin out of your foodstuffs. They had these neat, and I don't know if this was original or not, but these neat underneath the cabinets, these storage areas with glass sliding, frosted glass, and they have electricity, and so you could light them up, but they're under all the cabinets. This is just, this is one of the bedrooms it was at the time in the new addition. And there's also the other thing, there's like 14 different woods used throughout the house. This was just a, in the original home, you know, just a little phone nook, but again, nice wood detailing. The phone nook is cute and so on. And then of course, this is the sewing room. It was called the sewing room, I guess, and it's right off the kitchen and off the living room, but nice bright area with wood molding, crown molding, you know, wainscoting and everything. This was also new to me. I never heard about this. This is a Thompson photo mural in the dining room, which they added. Cherry wood here, which was called for in the original drawings. I sent a note to Mark at Thompson Photo, and he said, yep, that was Ed Thompson's photo of the Smokies taken around the 1930s. But that's literally all I know. Didn't find out much more about it. And this is another view, that same mural. It goes around the whole room. The other thing that's interesting about this room, it's the one room that has a coved ceiling, unique. But as you look around, you note this waterfall here. I'm assuming you all can see my cursor, but the waterfall here is enlarged over here. And this little yellow circle that I've highlighted here is this pictured, blown up here. And it shows this couple just gazing up at the waterfall. And supposedly the woman here is, I think she said the name was Margaret, or was a cousin, a great aunt or grandparent of one of the Thompson family. I don't know if that's true, but it would be wonderful to find out. The other unique thing were the marble bathrooms. In the original drawings, it was just called for standard, you know, sheetrock and tile, not marble ceiling, marble walls and floor. And so I contacted, I just found a marble company and contacted them to see if they could identify all these different colors of marble. Because I was also struck, I thought, why? And so that kind of led me to think, with the 14 different types of wood, the different colors of marble, that maybe this was a barter situation, because it was the Depression time, times were tough. Maybe he had to end up bartering for these materials, and that's why he ended up with all these different colors. Purely supposition, I have no idea. But it turns out that a lot of this marble is very rare, but it was also milled and came from the area. So like Maryville, just right next to the Howe family as well, there were various marble places around there. So it was fascinating to learn that. This is downstairs now in the office area that Joe built for his offices. And you can see, this was the community room. It's like 15 by 50 feet. It's a huge space if you haven't been in it. Beautiful wood beams, extremely thick walls, as you can see, just gorgeous. Then there's a little kitchenette off here, and then also are these two offices. And if you'll note, there's just built-in bookcases, wood wainscoting, stone floors, even the ceiling is a checkerboard wood panels. And it just, and then in the recessed lighting, this was 1940, so these were not common things to do as far as the lighting goes and so on. Of course, it's very low ceiling in here, but there was much attention to the quality materials and the details, and I think that shows Joe's craftsmanship. Okay, so now we're outside. This is the garden, a garage apartment he built for his in-laws. Even the detailing here, there's little scalloped edges on the wood siding. All the ironwork was supposedly from Towel Ironworks. Again, I'm not sure, but that's what I was told. And again, there's this attention to design. He has this circle theme in the railing here, and also these security doors are all little circles, and you'll see more of those. This iron strap hinges on the door, the leaded glass, there's these little peepholes. And this is all in this area. This detailed door is entering into the community room and is part of the downstairs office area. Living quarters up here, and this is all in the 1940s edition. This is a side view of the whole area. That's kind of hard to see. And this just shows some of those iron details. The little speakeasy, that's what I call it, but was in every door. You'll see it in every door. The leaded glass, the beautiful doorknob or handles. And then also just the vistas. Like even this is standing in one of the offices, and it's just this nice vista down to the community room with slotted doors, the ceiling tiles. I mean the wood. They are wood, but just laid out in a pattern to reflect the light in different ways. And then these outside, the terraces and the view to the north of the city of Knoxville, but just the railings. There's just so much attention to curving things, to making terraces for new plants and so on. So this is kind of shows, again, just to refresh where we've been, the Joe Howe landscape side, and then C.B. Howe nursery. And now we're going to go look a little bit more in detail over here on the north side of Wimpole. This is Joe's house and all the stone greenhouses. Oh, this is kind of this was the other thing I found was a 2003 UTK thesis that Catherine Steinhoff wrote. And what she did an inventory of the property that was Joe's area. And she found, oh, actually I do have more, but she inventoried it so that the gardens could, have a list of what plants were there and then keep updating it and have a whole data management system. So in this, she did some really great drawings of what was there. So, and I think this should be pretty much close to what Joe had there, upon his death in 1980. But the house is here, as you can see, and then the greenhouses, and we're going to look along this alleyway where the greenhouses, the garage, the large greenhouses, and again, all stone, and then his demonstration gardens in front. This was actually a vegetable garden that he had next to the house to serve the house and to test things out. And then this is across Wimpole, but we'll get to that. Okay, so these are the buildings along the alley that I just mentioned. This is this is the garage apartment, and beneath it is workspace. I mean, they had a lot of workspace. And this is another little stone house. This is one of the first greenhouses with the kind of temporary covering. And you can just see here the beginning of this. I call it the Quonset hut. It means it's Quonset type roof. It's a huge building with a, you could drive in trucks and stuff into this. And this is just another view of that this greenhouse. And then, of course, this is just another one structure stone workshop. And then the open greenhouses, again, continuing on down the alley to where we get to the big stone greenhouses that are covered. This area actually is used by a native plant rescue group. These are the stone greenhouses that I mentioned. I had never seen a stone greenhouse before. Used now, of course, for events, special events, but it's just beautiful. I mean, the workmanship is gorgeous. And again, he did all these curved areas, terrace steps, planting areas. This little square opening right next to the large stone greenhouse just kind of frames your view and takes you into the beautifully landscaped demonstration gardens from the backside, which is more, the working area with this area to grow plants and so on. More views now on the other side of the demonstration area, showing the round stone. These are the two small round stone structures. They were just used for holding plants and materials. They had these called moonlights, which are just small little portholes, no glass in them, just open to the weather. But they were that's how they were used. And again, you'll see the kind of winding lanes and the plantings in the same. Again, more, this is the planted demonstration gardens. I think this is the Martha Ashe one, actually. But on either side of these the two large stone structures, and these were used for his office. And even you can see here on the doors, this attention. I mean, the doors are curved. The screen door is slightly curved, and these beautiful strap hinges. So really just works of art. So now we're going to go to this area. So this is we're still on Joe's side. We're going to go across Wimpole to the Dogwood Center. It's now called the Dogwood Center. It was the plot barn, and look at that area. But this is the same. This is the plot barn, what was just a barn, and again, various garden centers there. And of course, also over here are many walls and winding roads and so on. Okay, this is the 1960s. Joe built it around then. This was called the plot barn. It was just an open place that had a dirt floor, had a ceiling that had kind of skylights in it, concrete block and brick. It was just, that was it. But when they were hired, the firm, Roberto DeLeon, it was out of DeLeon and Primer out of Louisville, Kentucky. I emailed with him and he said, this structure was so solid and so good that they actually were that's the reason this building is literally built on the foundation and structure of the original plot barn. And they really took time to look at the barks of the trees, of the surroundings, and that's how this ceiling was designed, was to try and emulate the different changing light of the bark of the various trees. The same goes for the silver metal mesh that's on the outside. That is supposed to change with the different colors, the different plants, and it does if you ever go there and look at it in the different changing lights. It's meant to reflect and to serve as a background for the beautiful trees and plants. And then around there are the other gardens, and of course the KBGA has done a beautiful job of making some of these even better. But like this set of trees here, Catherine Steinhoff noted in her thing that there were some trees that had just grown in place, original nursery trees meant to move off that grew too large, and now they created what's called an allée, just a row of trees framing. And so you have all these beautiful little curving roads, low stone walls, but they all serve as backdrops for the plants. And of course, some of the plants come from Joe's time. So luckily I was able, even though these gardens were put in after 1972, since they use a lot of the foundation that Joe had, I was able to say that they do contribute to the property's significance. And of course, these, as many of you may know, is the secret garden with some of the sculpture, the bamboo forest, and so on. Again, it does use some of Joe's original walls, but that's pretty much the limit. So it's kind of considered not contributing. Okay, then the C.B. Howe nursery and offices. Now this is now called the Center for Urban Agriculture. That's what it's used for, which is a wonderful programs of education, family garden plots, classes, walking trails, and so on. This is the area that we're looking at. We're C.B. Howe's office area, and this is a kind of a rendering of what was an option for the Center for Urban Agriculture as it's used today, with refugee gardens and classes and so on. So we're going to look at some of the buildings in C.B. Howe's office area. This building up in the top left was the Mule Barn. It was again a dirt floored brick building, but it's very much as it was. The only thing that's changed is, of course, the glass entry and this arbor on the side, and they left one of it just had inside, it's just totally open. They did have posts to tie the mules to, and they left one of those that's embedded in the concrete floor. And of course, now it's used for special events. This building next below that is the Howe. It was built in 1925, I believe. And it was kind of the office and storage and so on originally for the Howe nurseries. It has additions on the side that hopefully can be removed sometime, because it's got some nice brackets and some nice features to it that could be restored. Now you cannot enter it. There's asbestos and there's a lot of rotting wood. And of course, this is just showing the gardens that are used now, but were used back when back when CB was running it for nursery production. And this building was there as well as where some of these raised gardens. This shows some of the terraced areas, some crumbling, some not. You'll just see that you don't have the quality of craftsmanship in the stonework. But again, it was a working nursery, so it's just a different use. And this little building is the cottage. It was cottage. It was used for the administrator, so the bookkeeper and secretary and so on. It's just a open one room little cottage, but quite, it's quite cute. And now this shows, the big Cedars of Lebanon. They are majestic. I mean, 1860s, and they can live for 400 to 500 years. I mean, I've read that. And so the view from underneath these trees is this view towards the Smokies. I mean, it's beautiful. This area, you can see kind of some of the terraced, what's remaining, is supposedly used to be filled with azaleas. And so there are stories about the blooming azaleas in all colors, hundreds and hundreds, come see it. I would love to see color photographs of that. And again, this is remnants. There was a home where everybody was born, like 1880s, that has disappeared. And it's got to be, and it may be one of these foundations. I don't know. But they don't know what happened to that house where all the sons were born and SS Howe lived. But they all were born in that house, and it's not there anymore. Again, more views, just of different, but this is a huge area with nature. There's a native orchard. There are great signage, great loop trails, plant identifications, a children's garden, and so on. There's just lots to see if you haven't been there. And this is just kind of the buildings that surrounded this in the parking area. So it really was kind of a working nursery, which was the C.B. Howe part, plus the landscape demonstration gardens that was Joe's work. So you see Joe's here, these two photographs. This is the cash and carry structure that burned and they restored. It's open to the weather, but suppose the idea was you drive up and pick your stuff up and go out. But again, you see the curved walls, the beautiful stonework marking entries into the building. And then on the other end is the C.B. Howe, or the Howe Nursery, the working nursery, with not the attention to the beautiful stonework, but a production sun-baked earth, not shaded by trees like on the other half. So it's just this wonderful combination: working nursery, landscape demonstration gardens that now are the Knoxville Botanical Garden and Arboretum. And so it's 44 acres. Hopefully we'll get accepted to the National Register. And just many thanks. I'll wrap that up. Many thanks to everybody who helped. As you can imagine, doing this during COVID times, couldn't do it without the Knoxville Public Library and the Tennessee History Center, and many of Jack's articles from Metropulse. I mean, there are just so many people that were very, very helpful in getting this done. So with that, I will stop. And if there's any questions.
Thanks a lot, Nissa. That's all fascinating. And I thought I knew everything there was to know about that, and I learned a lot tonight. I really appreciate your sharing all that with us. One thing that occurred to me, and it's because I've been looking at the history of World's Fairs, I'm just thinking this way, but did the City Beautiful movement come into play with any of the Howell's thinking? Because that was in the 1890s was when suddenly people were starting to say we ought to have prettier cities than we do, and we ought to plant, especially botanically, and plant things and that sort of thing. Has that come up at all, or
yeah, I think particularly when I think back to, that there was information about the Centennial Commission, and that was 1895 and 97. And then there were various articles about, just different places that where they did, landscaping, but there wasn't enough detail. But I can't imagine that did not come up. I mean, when you particularly considering, the botany. I mean, Bruce Howe doing all these discoveries of plants that we still use today and that are just so common. It had to come up.
Yeah, a lot of wealthy people, especially women, came back from the Chicago World's Fair in 1897 and said, "Gosh, we need to make Knoxville prettier than it is." And they
and the Martha Howe, who studied at Lothrop School because it was a school for women, and she did bring back a friend, Dorothy Peace, who worked for the Howe Nursery. And then there was a man, and I forget his name, but he was supposedly known. He was out of Atlanta, but he was supposedly quite famous, and he would come and give talks. And I think he had something to do with the Sequoia Hills and the whole Stanford and that Arboretum that was there at one time.
Yeah. There's a question about where the land originally came from. Is a land grant. The Howells were connected to this land long before it's known to have been a formal nursery, right? They had a farm. This was their farm, right, at one time.
Yeah, I mean, they think, they do say in the thing back to 1786, when the original, when I just don't know. I mean, 200 acres and then 300 acres. There was no map, and of course, when you read some of the deeds from then, I mean, to me, it's impossible to tell. But it's highly likely that, yes, this was part of that land.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, Jack, I think I started to, was on the Joe Howe property, when she did her dissertation, she found 2,000 plant varieties. And of those 2,000, they represented 43 different families of plants, of which, 47% came from Asia, 32% came from North America, and 9% were hybrid varieties, 6% from Europe and multiple continents, and 1 variety from Africa. Now, Joe Howe, he supposedly never traveled out, but how he got all those. But he was quite, and it's kind of obvious, he really loved Japanese or Asian, ornamental trees and so on.
Yeah. One thing I noticed in one of the pictures I'd never noticed before, having been there so many times, is what it looks like. Is it a millstone and set into the floor in front of it?
Yes. Yeah, actually, the millstones were supposed to have come from Howe's Mill, and they are set. Joe put them at each of the entries, the exterior entries, from the community gardens or on the terrace on the other side. But you'll see them. They're at any of the openings in the demonstration gardens as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right. I thought that was really neat.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Who has not been there? I think you ought to go there. If not tomorrow, maybe like next month or something like that. It's open all the time, right? And you can just walk around in there. It's a wonderful asset for community. It's all fascinating. I would actually have some memories of Howell Nursery I used to deliver safety equipment, and I can't remember what they would order, but every couple of weeks I would drive a panel truck up to this amazing place that I don't remember ever seeing before, and just driving. You're in the middle of East Knoxville, and suddenly you're on the top of a hillside, looking at the most beautiful view of the mountains from that hilltop there. And I remember dealing with them, and it was just like a different world, a little paradise in the middle of urban East Knoxville, and not so little, 44 acres. That's a farm. Well, appreciate everybody joining us tonight, and come back next month, and we'll have something else. I can't remember if we've decided what that is, but we have several guest speakers lined up, and we'll find out who it is. The next third Thursday is when we do this. We every month on the third Thursday at 6 o'clock. Come join us, and we'll have something. And not always someone as interesting as Nissa, but maybe so now and then. But